I'm Mary Bruno, your host and author of 12 Stripes Deep, How Infertility and Other Suffering Delivered My Greatest Joys. A story about infertility, endometriosis, pain, and loss, but also a story of acceptance, answers, joy, and hope. It's one beautiful thing to get lost in words on a page, but it's an entirely different experience to grab your favorite drink and pull up a chair with the author as she invites you into her world. That's what I'm offering you here on the 12 Stripes Deep podcast. Your own personal audiobook, read by me with added thoughts and an occasional interview with or about a person or event in the book. I've learned firsthand how healing it can be to share your struggles and victories with others because we all want to know we are not alone and that there's hope no matter how your story unfolds. So whether it's a hot coffee or a glass of wine, I'm right here sipping with you. From my heart to your ears, this is a story just like yours. 12 Stripes Deep.
Chapter 16. The 12th Stripe. Faith is what gets you started. Hope is what keeps you going. Love is what brings you to the end. Mother Angelica. I was in an intimate prayer group with 4 other Catholic women a few years ago. In one of our book studies, my eyes were opened to a concept that was simple but riveting: consoling the heart of Jesus. In this book, Father Michael Gaitley describes a deep longing within Jesus himself. Behold, this heart which loves so much, yet is so little loved. Is there anyone who will console this heart? Is there anyone who will be my friend? St. Therese of Lisieux adds to this in her encounter of the humanity of the Eucharistic Heart of Jesus. Open quotes. She sees a man who has feelings, a man who is hurt when people are cold, ungrateful, and afraid of him. Close quotes. She enlightens us further to a desire to console his heart, which feels so neglected. Initially, it's easy to think that the physical agony of his crucifixion would be the source of his most intense pain. But Gaitley insists that Jesus' heart burns with such extraordinary love for us in his longing to forgive. Accepting his mercy quenches the flames a bit and consoles his heart, but many souls don't seek his forgiveness. Open quotes. Jesus sees humanity's pain constantly in every detail, and it shatters his heart. Thus, Jesus desperately longs to reach out with his saving, healing, and consoling touch. Whether or not he can depends in large part on us. Close quotes. There are a few different things we can take from this reflection. One point reminds us that Jesus is fully divine, but is also fully human. He understands the longings and desires of the human heart well, because he has experienced all of them. He knows quite well what it means to feel forgotten. Another important and comforting point of contemplation lends to a better understanding of how desperately Christ desires to ease our own pain, so much so that his heart doesn't rest until ours do. He is just as invested in the purity and peace of our hearts as we are, even more so. It often seems like he is working against us when things don't go as we have planned, because we are aware that God can make anything happen with the snap of a finger. But he is not a magician. He is a lover, and a lover considers what is best for his beloved and makes those desires his own. On my worst day ever, I did not feel like his beloved. But as I recall those days with a reflective heart that has accepted his invitation to go deeper, I can see more clearly. I can see a lover who is patient and who will spare no expense to reach my heart. Oh, the pain I must have caused him when I looked at him with blame. Oh, how it must have hurt him to refuse me the comfort I sought, to have me choose himself no matter what. There was only one thing he desired greater than consoling my heart at that moment in time, and that was winning my heart outright to award him the pleasure of consoling it for an eternity. I am so grateful he has prevailed in his unfailing pursuit of me, because he has equipped me for other trials to come. That New Year's Eve moment that provoked a realization of my impending final surgery took place almost 2 years after my myomectomy, a time period which had become all too familiar. Within the next 2 weeks, my hysterectomy was scheduled. There would be no first look lap to give any wiggle room for escaping my fate this time. Settling on an official date made it real and kicked off the official countdown towards the very last days of possible fertility. Fortunately, I had a couple of months to prepare my heart. Days and weeks passed. I made sure to go into the deep crevices of my heart to make sure I was appropriately dealing with what was about to happen. I made a conscious effort to be honest about all my thoughts and feelings, because I know from experience what happens when those aren't addressed. I prayed hard and focused on gratitude. I didn't want any lies to creep in and confuse me about my identity as a woman and daughter of God, or recognition of my motherhood. I had never devoted so much valuable time and attention to my spiritual and emotional health, an effort which, joined with the years God invested into this preparation, produced the most stunning fruit. Many will consider 11 surgeries to be overkill. I view it as a great mercy, because my heart made great use of that time, and I needed to know that absolutely everything had been tried before agreeing to that last resort. That date continued to creep closer, but my peace only grew. My joy was only enhanced. There is no earthly explanation for the profound comfort I experienced daily, even in the face of great sadness. What a juxtaposition this was when stacked against my worst day ever. It was in direct contrast to the comfort I sought after learning of my false positive pregnancy test. My bitterness was magnified by a repetitive denial of my plans and my perception of both womanhood and motherhood. But God didn't give up on me. He broke through my walls and with my permission took this broken woman with a broken uterus and transformed her into someone with great purpose, who not only understands, but values herself for exactly who she is and how she was made. Even standing before the crystal clear recognition of permanent infertility, I was okay. I was sad, but I was okay. There was no blame. I didn't need to ask for comfort because he was already lavishing it upon me. It was strange to be so at peace during this time. I was uncharacteristically joyful, but I couldn't complain about that. On the contrary, I desired nothing more than to share this account of hope, which ended up coming together in a very unexpected way. I did not set out to write this book. As a longtime blogger, it seemed fitting to create a series of posts describing this story, which carried me through so many hills and valleys, and ultimately great hope. I wrote 3 blog posts, which eventually became chapters 1, 5, and 7, as the Holy Spirit unleashed himself onto many pages, revealing what would soon unfold into the book you presently hold in your hands. The lies I believed about a prescribed form of living out my faith as a Catholic woman were replaced with the magnificent truth. Despite the inability to procreate, God was not done with me. Who says I need a uterus to bear fruit? The one that took my uterus. I enjoyed the unexplainable peace I graciously lived in, but kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. I imagined myself packing for Houston by violently throwing clothes into my suitcase out of anger while soaking each shirt and set of pants with my tears. Would Chris have to carry me to the car? Surely I wasn't comprehending how real this was. But when the time came, I packed up my bags and walked to the car just fine. Then I imagined Chris having to carry me, bawling, crying, out of the hotel to head to my pre-op room so they could prep me for surgery. Surely then it would feel real. But when the time came, I left the room on my own accord just fine. I even snapped a cute picture of Chris and I walking down the street at 5 a.m. Finally, I thought for sure they would have to pry my cold, dead fingers off the door jamb as they wheeled me out of the pre-op room and into the operating room. But when the time came, they wheeled me without complaint. I did the hard internal work to prepare for this day. God was faithful to his promises. Chris and I had arrived in Houston several days early to escape another hurricane that was headed toward Louisiana. We ended up really enjoying what became a mini vacation, maybe a hysterectomoon, in that big Texas town, sightseeing, taste testing at different restaurants, enjoying margaritas, visiting a fancy garden, and simply enjoying each other. You would have never known I was about to have the most dreaded surgery of my life. On the eve of surgery, I had to fast because operating would require an empty stomach. Chris stepped out to grab a bite to eat, and this provided a few much-needed moments alone to powwow with my maker. We stayed on floor 20-something of a hotel with a huge bay window, which left us with a breathtaking view of the city. My gaze stretched miles deep, locking eyes with the setting sun wrapped in yellow and outstretching its orangey red arms as if to embrace me. It was a stunning backdrop for my intimate moment with God. The colorful mix of clouds was a calming scene mimicking his peaceful influence on my heart. I cried. It was hard to believe that this long and hard-fought journey was ending and preparing the way for a new one to begin. Once again, I took the opportunity to thank God for all the gifts he has given me. I offered him my pain and invited him to make use of it as I said my final goodbyes to any hope of biological children. There was a death about to take place here, but there was also new life being formed all around me. I have the love of a guy who sincerely cares for me at my worst and is equally as joyful about the prospects of our future, even though it was looking nothing like we had planned. When I was younger, I had my life figured out just like I had my future husband figured out. But God blew both of my ideas out of the water. I not only had the sincere and devout love of two men, one on earth and one in heaven, but I felt it. How could I not be joyful? This surgery marked the 12th stripe on a long list of operations, leaving a total of 14 unique scars. Scar tissue, of course, through a few curveballs that were ultimately taken care of. My colon surgeon was back to do some cleanup work as well, and I had a surprise visit from a urologic surgeon. Generally, as I come out of anesthesia, I slowly become more and more aware of my surroundings while my eyes remain closed. I hear nurses talking and typing information, asking me about my pain, to which I respond with vague grunts, and administering medication, etc. Then at some point, transportation comes and wheels my bed into the elevator, where I feel every bump, and into my recovery room. The nurse then helps him or her to not so cautiously transfer me onto the next hospital bed by using those classic white sheets. This immediate post-op experience was no different than the other ones until the grogginess finally wore off and I opened my eyes. Previously, I had imagined that at this point, I would certainly wake from anesthesia and immediately burst into uncontrollable tears as I became more and more aware of where I was and what had just happened. But that didn't happen either. As I emerged from my deep sleep, the first thing I saw was Chris's smiling face. The second thing I saw was a crisp white lotus floating in dirty water, hanging on the hospital room wall. This is the very plant that signifies growth from the most unexpected of environments, and that my friend Julianne drew from our giveaway. This 16 by 20 beauty was framed on the wall in perfect view and protected by crystal clear glass. I instantly felt my heart hugged by Christ himself. It was impossible for me to feel forgotten at this point, as he made sure I knew how intensely treasured I was at the most perfect moment. The magnitude of this surgery, its permanence, and the invitation into my heart was not lost on him. Right away, He provided a meaningful reminder that the loss of my uterus said nothing about the beauty he will continue to bring into the world through the murky waters of my life. I will always be limited by my human nature, but Christ within me cannot be contained. Several days later, we arrived home to begin recovery. I was still at peace. Chris and I also had a post-op phone consultation with Dr. Stephen Hilders, where he would assess my recovery and discuss some surgery details. He expressed that the amount of disease I had developed over the years was quite impressive, noting that he even found endometriosis within my fallopian tube, which occurred in only 14% of premenopausal women, according to research in the Journal of Minimally Invasive Gynecology, and is extremely difficult to diagnose. This certainly added another layer to reasons why pregnancy couldn't have occurred, barring a miracle. Fortunately, Chris and I were at a place where we could laugh at how impossible pregnancy had actually become. It really seemed as though we may have never had a chance. This was strangely satisfying to me, as I considered that God had always truly designed another path for us. My friend Elise, who helped me to discover and dive into my rapping genius, was unable to visit me due to the COVID pandemic, so she mailed me a sweet card instead. As I opened the "Get Well Quick" cover to a "You're Too Nice to Be Sick" message, a handwritten note dropped on the floor. It had been written on my surgery day, and I wanted to share some of what she said. My sister, after praying and thanking God for keeping you safe, it hit me like a ton of bricks. Your uterus is gone. I couldn't stop crying. I hesitated to even write this, but then God put it on my heart that you need to know that someone mourned for your loss today. It wasn't just me, but what he was allowing me to feel, the great sadness that he was feeling for your loss and your pain. He recognizes your sacrifice for him, your strength, your courage, your intense perseverance. He recognizes your surrender to his will, and he is overcome with joy that you continue to choose him. I know that if this is his plan, then literally today is the birth of something new. I cannot wait to see what true fertility God has in store for your life. He is releasing you of the weight of not knowing and calling you from physical pain to be reborn and be created new, because he has so much work for you to do. Nothing can hold you back now. The words on the paper struck my heart immediately, instantly calling to mind Father Michael Gaitley and company's thoughts on consoling the heart of Jesus. Even as Christ's heart burns due to lack of care and attention given by so much of humanity, he longs to embrace my own little heart with his comforting presence and make my suffering his own. He longed for me to know that he mourned the loss of something so significant and precious right along with me. Open quotes. Jesus sees humanity's pain constantly in every detail, and it shatters his heart. Thus, Jesus desperately longs to reach out with his saving, healing, and consoling touch. Close quotes. Several days later, I received another generous and thoughtful gift from my other close friend, Lisa. I opened up a small gift box decorated with gold flowers to find a purple velvet pouch holding a small lotus flower charm dangling from a beautiful rose gold necklace. Purpose blossoms. Physical recovery took a bit longer than expected, so Chris, Bella, and I moved in with my parents for a couple of months. My mom's servant heart has sprung into action beautifully after each surgery, and this time was no exception. She once again provided me with the much-needed rest required to get back to normal. It didn't take too long for my creativity, mission to empower women, and desire to write to come back online. Ripe with emotion from surgery, I continued to develop this memoir and even began to formulate my book proposal. Putting the words of my experiences throughout the years down has been incredibly healing and has allowed me to feel even more purpose. It was also during this time that a nearly year-long collaborative project with two good friends, Emily at Total Wine and Jen at Surprised by Marriage, finally came together and was published. Uncharted Territory is a series of 6 written conversations struck up between the three of us, combining raw, honest, and beautiful fertility awareness testimonies from our 3 completely different perspectives: infertile, fertile, and subfertile. Our teamwork and common passions blossomed so beautifully over that year that it inspired Emily and I to discern partnering up for a business venture that would allow us to dramatically improve fertility awareness education, access, and solidarity. God has allowed unique and painful experiences in both of our lives and equipped us with the personalities, abilities, and drive to be 2 of many who serve him with this mission. So, less than a month after surgery, we theoretically broke ground on what would eventually become a 501c3 nonprofit organization called Fanbase, of which I presently serve as executive director. Our website, www.fabmbasc.org, exists to help women and couples to find the fertility awareness method that fits them best, educate women of all ages on birth control and alternatives to that and artificial reproductive technologies, helps them to find restorative reproductive medicine, and provide a space where people who experience the various difficult and rarely discussed topics regarding NFP use can come together for support. I do not think this timing was accidental. The end of an era of fertility problems and wavering hope was heartbreaking, but it also almost instantly breathed life into even greater opportunities for my life and sense of purpose. We also found a new adoption agency that we are much more comfortable with and are presently awaiting God to send Bella a brother or sister in his time. How can I not be joyful? I understand that this is a book that largely describes a range of my personal experiences, fears, joys, and talents. It is cathartic, but it also feels very strange and oftentimes uncomfortable to talk about myself in this way. I am not hoping to simply tell you a story about myself. I hope to communicate the possibilities available by way of faith in Christ. They go well beyond our own imagination because God is not limited like we are. I want you to understand the immeasurable value in yourself as you are, and in being honest about how you feel in regards to the sufferings that God allows in this life. Grasp their potential use. It is easy to hold firm when our ground is not shaking, causing our world to fall apart. The true test of our faith occurs when the Richter scale comes into play and tests the very foundation on which we stand. It is possible to reach a place where hope cannot fail despite life's nastiest curveballs, when we believe in God's unfailing attention to our best interests. Tested. Earlier this year, Bella went to her yearly checkup and failed her hearing test. It wasn't all that surprising because even though she speaks very well, she often has a hard time hearing us and the TV. The audiologist that fitted her for hearing aids recommended that we come back every 6 months instead of the typical yearly follow-up to see if her hearing loss is progressive, to which we responded, "Progressive? We didn't even know that was a possibility." But because she passed her newborn hearing test and had now failed multiple, it would be wise to check routinely. Well, this certainly wasn't on our radar. My brain instinctively wanted to go down an imaginary rabbit hole of what ifs. What if this is progressive? What if she becomes completely deaf before she even becomes a teenager? What would that look like? How on earth would we operate? How will her peers treat her? Oh my goodness, the list could go on forever. But I caught myself after those first several depressing questions to offer myself another perspective in light of what my battle with infertility did for me. Let's say she does completely lose her hearing. It would certainly be very scary for everyone, especially her at first. She would miss that precious ability we all take for granted for probably the rest of her life. We would all need to mourn. But she would learn a plethora of new things. We would all get creative and figure out how to communicate. We would focus our attention on gratitude for what we do have and all we have learned through this experience. Yes, she would have trials, but she would also have the opportunity to become stronger from all of it. And who knows what other little girl or boy's life with similar struggles she would impact. None of life's headaches or inconvenient hotels, as my heavenly BFF, St. Theresa of Avila, so eloquently puts it, are shocking for our Creator. He has planned for every single one of them. We humanize God when we blame or forget Him when things don't go our way, as if we are being ignored or less important than our neighbor, whose life appears to be a picture of perfection. But there is no life condition or event that God can't make something or someone better as a result. And there is no neighbor whose life is perfect. Suffering has many different sources, but the healing response is always the same. Step into it. Get curious. Be honest with yourself. Be honest with God. Unite with the pain of Christ. Ask, what is God trying to teach me? How can I make the world better from this experience? Choose to love. Get up after failing. Choose to love again. Forgive. Find purpose. Repeat. Hope became tangible when I stopped dwelling on myself as damaged and started to wonder what I might learn from all of this. The future of life is unknown. It will bring surprises, confusion, joys, heartbreaks, fears, and sadness. I know God is faithful to His promises because I have witnessed Him outdo my expectations over and over again. He doesn't even know how to fail me. And this realization has provided great peace, even as I prepare to face an array of different challenges yet to come. Healing is not the absence of suffering, but finding suffering's purpose. Joy and mourning can and often do coexist. I can choose to let infertility break me, or I can find the unexpected love story about how it, along with other sufferings, has delivered my greatest joys, the joy of significant spiritual growth, greater strength, increased depth of intimacy with God and my spouse, our beautiful and one-of-a-kind daughter, the hope of another child, the understanding of motherhood as a choice we make daily, and a challenge to uncover my true gifts and purposes. I would not be the woman I am today without my struggles. 12 stripes deep, they've made me who I am. 12 laps on this track, but I still stand. And you will too. Joy is very infectious. Therefore, be always full of joy. Mother Teresa.
Catherine of Siena said, "Be who God meant you to be, and you will set the world on fire." I hope you enjoyed this episode and that it lit a little match in you. You can visit my website at marygBruno.com and follow me at White Lotus Blooming. Connect with some amazing women and infertility resources at springsinthedesert.org, thefruitfulhollow.com, and catholicinfertilityresources.com.